Good evening, and welcome to EnergyNMotion. I am your host, Rah Kalon, and I cannot explain how excited I am tonight, specifically for this topic, also for this group of people that I get to have this conversation with. But before I get into all that, I want to remind you where you are at. You are in a safe space. EnergyNMotion, its purpose is to make sure that you have a place to come unpack the experiences, the motivations, and also unfold the purpose behind this box of feelings that we all carry around all day. So I want you to get into a mindset where this is a vulnerable space, a calm space. This is your time during the week. Thank you for joining us this bi-weekly time. So, good evening, and welcome to Energy. During this time, I want to make sure that we also get to introduce our lovely guests tonight. So I'm going to start to my lovely right. We have Chelsea.
What's up, what's up, what's up?
Chelsea speaking to the people. We have my beloved friend, Sir Dame Amina.
Hello, hello.
And of course, we have Joshua Walker.
Blessed to be here.
Blessed prophet, blessed. So,
Lay it down upon me.
I also want to thank all of y'all who reached out the last episode. There were so many questions that did end up coming in that didn't end up getting answered or talked about, but I want to let you know that I saw them, and I know that you know that I responded to you directly, but it's different when you thought your comment would get to be talked about on air. So please do not stop doing that. We will keep talking about them. I love engaging in these conversations, so thank you for making this a lot more personal. I love sharing this with you live and later on when you watch it too. Always feel free to reach out. So today's topic specifically, if you found out about this through Instagram and all the other things, is about worthiness. It's specifically called, Are You Willing to Be Worthy? And so I want to ask my group of peers here, when you hear the word worthy, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What's the first feeling you get?
Uneasy.
Okay, uneasy.
I think that's something that I've probably been working on. That word specifically, I think, is what makes me uneasy. I think if I could like change the word to something else, that might feel more comfortable. But like, worthy in itself is a grand word, and it feels full. It feels like it's something that's powerful, and so it can't just be played with. And I like to play, so it feels it feels like it has gravity.
Okay, I see that.
Definitely a weighted term. Yeah. Like when I saw the post, I was like, whew, Chile.
Yeah.
Whew, the journey of. And like, so many going back and forth with, the willingness to deem yourself worthy. Like it's really heavy.
Absolutely.
But,
It's like an inherent, almost like a deserving of something that just requires your action of taking ownership of it.
You've been reading Brene Brown?
I have not.
You have not? Okay. Well, Brene says something very, very similar, and I look forward to talking about that. So obviously, every show I end up pulling up some type of definition for the words that I like and that I pick specifically. So this week, worthy's definition, coming from the Cambridge Dictionary, goes worthy, deserving respect, admiration, or support, also deserving or suitable for anything above. So when I hear this description of worthy, I think a lot of people put heavy weight into what worth comes down to, right? I think it sounds like a faraway thing, something you have to achieve over time, something that almost is unattainable. So my first thought is when did y'all start to grow an opinion about yourself? When did you first become aware of whether you felt good or bad about you?
I think that starts immediately.
When do you recall?
That's smart. You're not talking about the science? You don't want to bring the science.
You can bring the science in if you want to.
So when you're a protozoa, you can actually hear your mother in the womb, and she's speaking upon you blessings.
If she's speaking blessings, or if she's happy you coming or not.
Exactly. But as I would say, probably, I don't have a very vivid memory of childhood, and so I don't know the exact first one. But I think, knowing who my mom is, that my image of myself and what's right and wrong and what's worthy of something and what isn't was formed very early.
Okay.
For me, I know school age, so entering, I want to say first grade, because I really didn't do preschool. But I was like above. No, I think for me personally, I was living in New York with my father and my mother up until about 4 or 5, like the age to start going to school. So I think that shift had a bit to do with it, and not really understanding like where one parent has gone. Does that mean it was me?
Yeah.
And then you go to school, and then you're meeting new people and trying to find your place in that. Like, it was a lot of, okay, well, I don't really fit with this. I don't fit with that. What does that mean for me?
Trying to determine where you belong at.
Yeah, for sure. So for people, I know for myself, when you like expect your environment or the people around you to reflect your worth,
Absolutely.
that was my first introduction to that, was school, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's where most people end up getting caught up at school
Yeah,
too.
because at home, I mean, you have a support, but
You hope to. You hope to.
yeah, that fact.
Mine was 7. I remember mine vividly.
Ooh.
It was 7. We were in Las Vegas, and me and my brothers, we used to all get together to fight. Not beat the crap out of each other. It was
Just
just
fight.
good old family fight. Well, one of my oldest brother, he was in karate at the time, and he decided to form his own little fight club. And so, me being his protege, he would train me. Like,
Obviously.
just straight Rocky style, of course.
Right.
And I had to go up against my first fight, this 9-year-old kid. I think I was 6 or 7. I was 7, he was 9. And he was one of our next door friends, and it was bare knuckle. It was just straight bare knuckle. So we get to fighting, he hits me in my face, and then I go off on the guy on one of the
You used your training.
I used my training. I used my training to defeat my opponent. And from then, we were all good. We all came together, ate some popcorn and lemonade, and that's when I started to realize, like, oh, well, I can actually do something more than myself. Even though it was, a small example of a larger opponent or somebody that you thought was larger than what your ability was, that was a moment of worthiness right there.
Yeah, because it made you recognize what you're capable of, or even just an inkling of what
Just a
you're
little,
capable
just a
of.
little, yeah.
And so the reason why worth is such an important topic, I think, for people to talk about and to engage in is because I don't think people talk about worth in the sense of just it being innate. I think people talk about worth either religiously, so you're worth, more than rubies, more than gold, or they talk about worth as in a woman's worth, as in like her protecting her virtue or things like that. And so we have all these social influences surrounding worth, but no one's actually helping us connect with our own understanding of our own self-worth, how to value ourselves, and where this kind of begins at. So who influenced your beliefs as you grew up as to whether you deemed yourself worthy or not? Who were the main people who molded that in you?
Definitely family. I mean, just because that's your first point of contact in this world.
Yeah.
Whether that's like positive or negative, that's going to be your first connection. And I know for me, that was it. And then I think just myself and how like I internalized the world had a lot to do with it. Because you just, you start comparing yourself to other people, and like
TV,
yeah,
magazines.
oh my gosh, yeah, like just so many things. And then depending on where you grew up, like what kind of, like you said, like social factors go into that. Like, let's put colorism into this. Let's put gender. Let's, do sexuality, like so many things, so being like on the side of like being marginalized and not really knowing, it's like, well, I don't really fit into what's normal, so like,
so where do I belong?
yeah, and you can't really quantify everything, so
There's so many different measurements that pop up. That's what I was thinking about this the other day on the idea of measurement itself. Because if you have a foundational measurement of your value system, or if you have an immeasurable foundation of your value system, then it can't be limited by whatever decisions or lifestyle or category or socioeconomic status you have, because there's this knowledge of self that, okay, well, I have this limitless capability, but coming from a young age, it takes a long time for somebody to become aware of that. And most people don't even become aware that they have this extra factor that extends your ability beyond what you think is possible.
Yeah, and most adults are telling you to be limited, because they've, through some, facet of life, have forgotten that limitlessness of it.
Yeah, and I also think it's the idea that when it comes to feeling good about yourself, we don't really live in a culture that celebrates that. It's
No.
braggy. It's annoying. It's arrogant when you have a healthy
Conceited.
self-confidence. It's conceited. And people start to call you out on that at a young age. It's like, oh, I look pretty. Oh, girl, you too cute, huh? You calm
Yeah.
down.
Calm
And,
down, shut up.
you know,
Yeah.
not too much, not too much. And it's like, well, why can't they feel good about themselves?
Yeah.
So do you think that when we come into the world, you think we start out pretty confident and then it comes out of us as people influence us? Or do you think that we learn whether to be confident or not as we grow up?
I think that that's learned.
Yeah, I think it happens, like I said, I think it happens very early. And those people who can't let you shine, they come from a background of people not shining and people not allowing them as a child to shine. And so when they see that, I don't know if it's like jealousy, I'm not sure if you even at that age know what it is, but it's something you want, you know you don't have. And I don't know if that's human nature to want to take something from someone else who has something, but that's probably learned as well.
I would definitely agree. I agree to this extent that I think it is learned from where we as people who are adults witnessing it can tell. But I do think there's a certain confidence that comes with babies. There's just this trust to them. They're dumb, you know, they first come into the world. They don't know the things that we know. So we call them dumb because they're not, you know, hip to all these other things.
Yeah.
But there's a certain like ambiance to them that is almost all knowing. While they poop on themselves, still all knowing.
Yeah.
And I think as you grow, that's where the imagination, that's where the confidence, the, you know, this vibrant nature that people slowly try to pull out of you because it scares them, because they haven't seen something like it, because they don't know how successful that could be later on.
Right.
I think that also impacts it too. So I definitely think it is learned. But at the same time, I've met babies, a couple really dope babies that just seem like, no, I know, I got this. Until someone teaches them that they don't have
Right,
this.
yeah, babies are processing so much information.
Coming in all at the
Yeah,
same
exactly.
time.
And so I think it'd be so interesting if they could communicate to us, because I think babies are like supercomputers. Like really, they are. Like they are constantly learning, adapting, trying. And those are things that I think that might be linked to worthiness in a way. It's like the fear of trying, doing, experimenting, failing. Babies don't know what failure is. They just like, ow, okay, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe, no, it still hurts.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, they'll do something and it won't work the first time and they'll keep trying and then they'll get it. And so they're just constantly adapting. And that
yet
takes,
we've become too rigid
right,
to
very rigid, and that rigidity kind of holds you in those caricatures or whatever traits were put on you. You stay rigid to those. You always cling to all of that.
It's like almost kind of learning like the definition. It's like I feel like babies have a lot of belief in self, because what else do they have to believe in other than like this outward person, which would be, you know, that primary caregiver.
Exactly.
But yeah, they believe in self first and foremost. So like the ability to find nourishment, like they don't know that you're putting the titty in the mouth, they just know that they found it.
Yeah,
and
it's
they
here.
kept sucking until that they were full. And when they learned to turn over, it's like, yo, I used my strength, I kept going until I couldn't.
Exactly.
And that building of worth does start there, because the definition is like seeing yourself worthy of admiration and support.
Support.
You know, so your first connection of support is yourself.
Yeah.
You know, that you saw you could walk, and it's like, oh shit, I'm walking.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then you
kinda
got
like-
people around you saying like this, oh, you walking? It's
Yeah,
like, oh shit, I'm
and people are
walking.
celebrating it. They're
it's like,
happy
we
about
walking,
it.
oh, hey, you know, like it's that process, and it does start that early, because there are people, unfortunately, like even as parents, that have so much fear and pent up resentment towards self and the world around them, that they do see something so innocent and so, I don't want to say an empty vessel, but so capable, that they don't know how to react. So they don't know how to support, you know? So it does start at that young age. It's like, oh, well, look at this. He walking, but who gives a damn? And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I thought I was doing something, but I guess now I'll sit down.
Yeah, and we're also of a nature to start complaining about stuff. So as soon as they start walking, it's like, oh, you always getting into stuff. We ain't happy that you're moving
Wall.
stuff. Yeah, wall.
You
You
want
know,
me up or
as
you
soon
want me
as you're
not?
doing something, as soon as they start talking, oh, I hope, can't wait to hear what they sound like. Start talking. Shut up. Why you talk so much? We're never in a place of being happy with the present of what most people are doing, even including ourselves. And I think also a point to like babies are just confident in self because they are focused on themselves. They're so egocentric. all they're thinking about is themselves. That's their
I
only
almost
focus.
think that what you guys are describing is a lack of self, like a lack of knowing of self. It's like, you are me, so when I'm crying, you know what I'm thinking.
You should, yeah.
No, like babies actually, they don't realize that they're an entity until like, I don't know if it's years or like 9 months, but for a couple of months, they do not realize that they are separate from you.
Yeah.
And so it's almost that connection to their higher self and that connection to source or whatever you want to call it that makes them seem so limitless. And when they are trying to communicate, they believe that you are a part of them. And so that's why they piss. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Why can't
Until
you-
we grew up and disconnected.
You hear me, you know I won't.
But it's also the simplicity. And when we're younger, I think worth gets harder to be receptive to because you start to see more layers in life. You start to see all these other things that other people have. Comparison is the thief of joy. So as you get older, it's like, oh, that's another thing I don't have, or it's another thing I can't do. Less and less worthy, instead of actually being egocentric and being like, this is another thing I found out about myself. It seems like we're usually, when we're learning things about ourselves, it's usually the hard way. I don't know, have you ever had an experience where you learned something very positive about yourself in a moment, like in a clutch moment?
Oh, I have an ego problem.
Exactly. I learned the worst things about myself, usually in clutch moments, but it's
What do you mean by clutch moment?
like when your instinct has to act. Have you ever had a moment where your instinct was just like, oh, I'm an amazing person. I have so much self-confidence that the first thing I did was like this great heroic thing instead of like being an asshole. In some of my instinctual moments, I'm an asshole. So I think that adds to your ability to recognize, because you know the things that you think, you know the things that you do, you know the things that you're a hypocrite about, you tell other people not to do. So when you have all that, it's hard to forgive yourself enough to deem yourself worthy of anything, because you have this record of all the shit that makes you unworthy, while I could say, oh, you're worthy because I only know 30% of your shit.
You said something about the innate oneness of a child, and it's not even believing, it's just that they feel like they know that they don't know that they're a separate entity. So if I'm crying, you know that I'm hungry, or you know that I need to be this, that, or the other, because you are me. And then on this was being talked about earlier, about this original sin of separation. Some point between an infant and older, we separate ourselves from ourselves. And what I mean by that is, okay, well, we recognize that we're separate entities, but at that same time, somewhere along the line, we forget that we're also the same as the original entity that created us. That be the mother.
Yeah.
And so when we assess our worth and say, well, he has this and she has that and I don't have this and blah, 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 blah. All of these scenarios have been experienced by one consciousness of people. It's just that you are experiencing a perspective that either includes or does not include the thing that you're assessing the worth on. But once you realize that everybody either has or doesn't have at one particular point, then having or not having is worth nothing. It's how you respond to what you have or do not have at that point.
Of course.
Can we talk about how capitalism really affects people's idea of self-worth?
Who about to stop you?
Because
Go do it.
because that also has something to do with it, I feel, because as adult people, we have already gotten to a point where we can look at a product or a person and see what your potential and worth is, and what me investing my time and energy into you will equate for me. Like, everything is quantifiable, and we do kind of project that onto younger people, just because they don't know what something's worth. Like, as a kid, you ask for something because you don't know, you just want
it looks fun.
Yeah.
And at this point, as far as social media, it's easy to quantify yourself. Like, it's easy to compare yourself to others with numbers, with likes, with all the
I'm not producing enough, I'm not doing enough, so I'm not worthy.
And then it comes back to the idea that I think we're slowly moving back into a day and age where feelings do matter, but we had gotten to a point where only fact mattered. Feeling was seen as kind of like a weak substitute, and so people weren't engaging in that. A liberal art, it's like, oh, that's nice. What you feel, that's nice, but it didn't occupy any heavy space. People didn't respect that, and so I think that chimed into a lot of the lack of mental wellness that we experience as a community as well. So, what is an experience you've had of having to work towards worthiness in your own lives? I'll share mine, but I'm the host, so I'll go last. What's an experience y'all have had?
You've been kind of quiet. We've been bouncing things. I think we would love to hear your experience. A good example.
This face.
No?
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna give you what you want. So an experience of worthiness for me would have to be in starting public school. So I was homeschooled originally till 12 years old, and had all these made up ideas. I had all these made up ideas on what being a teenager was supposed to be like, until of course I got to public school and the children, they wrung me of my dreams.
What would be a TV show that like represented what you thought it was going to be like?
Sister, Moesha. I just thought this is how people engage and interacted.
Yeah.
The hoodlums that I went to school with, though, the hoodlum, ratchetness, that I ended up thinking, okay, so I'm very ill-equipped to deal with these people because they made fun of how I talked. Because I talked a lot like this back then. They made fun of the fact that when someone or an adult spoke to me, I said yes ma'am and no ma'am. It was just because I was a good obedient kid that they deemed me, kiss ass. They deemed me like weak because of my just natural demeanor and having been homeschooled. So you're around adults all the time. You ain't about to act a donkey just because. So there came to be a point where I was doing this thing. I was the first kid at that middle school that had dreadlocks. This was before Katrina hit and dreadlocks became popular. Everybody loved locks. It went from, oh, you nappy Cheeto head, da 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 da. Oh, I love Lil Wayne. I love locks. And it's like, you was hating last night. So before locks were popular, I used to wear one earring, and I used to have these little Cheeto locks. This was like shorter than Joshua's, just Cheeto locks. And they were so mean. And they used to ask me, could you just take that one earring out? Like, why do you just wear that one earring? Just take that one earring. I don't know why they were bothered. Yeah. They were bothered. And I had no fashion sense. When I tell you I wore jumpers and I dressed like a homeschool kid. So the one edgy thing I had was my earring. And I held on to that. I held on to that earring. I held on to the locks, even though they kept telling me, you Cheeto head, nappy head, all the things. And I discovered, even though I started to struggle with how I felt I looked, that I still felt like I deserved to not be talked to that way. I remember thinking I deserved better than this. And I remember wondering, did other people my age think that I deserved better than this, or could they articulate it? And now that I've worked with students before, I feel like they feel that feeling, but they can't always say the words of, I'm being disrespected. I know that this is childhood. I know that this is bullying, but I deserve better than this. And so they resort to hitting or to fighting and to, trying to go all in when they really just can't articulate, don't talk to me like that. I deserve better. And so my experience was just realizing, even though I didn't learn to advocate for myself for years after that, I was like, I know I deserve more. And that set a point that I could grow from to keep expecting more for myself.
Yeah. I think I was pretty lucky in that I played basketball. So I wasn't popular, but people knew me and oh, Chelsea, she plays basketball. Yeah. So I just kind of was able to coast through high school without being bullied or anything. And I mean, I was kind of funny. I'm way funnier now. I was able to kind of do that. But I think when I really had to challenge worthiness was kind of more towards being an adult, and I was just kind of going through the motions, doing things, checking things off, going to school, getting the degree, buying the house, doing all the things that adults do, and realizing that I wasn't happy. I was like, why am I, how long am I supposed to do this? Oh, forever? This doesn't feel
committed.
This doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's a trap.
I don't think that's what I want to do. And so it was actually meeting you and the many conversations we've had that really helped me break apart the cynic in me. The cynic that was this is good. This, if you do that, you ain't gonna have this, or you're not gonna be successful in that. Who does that? No one can do that.
So just all the doubt.
Yeah, it was just, I was always a con person. What could go wrong? And I think shifting, and it took time. So like, kind of when you were saying like the clutch moment, at first I would have to catch it in hindsight. I wouldn't realize I was speaking ill of myself until maybe an hour later. I was like, that was kind of fucked up, the way I was just talking to myself right then. And then it became, I could catch myself in the middle of doing it. I'm like, you're on a train, stop, blah, blah, blah. And then there was a moment where I literally, it was like this thought was like coming through. It was like, and I literally stopped it before it, tried to come to my mouth.
Came all
and
the
I
way out.
smiled, and I was just like, yeah. And so like, it's always kind of happened in that stage. And so I think that's something that took practice. And I'm still practicing it now. Yeah. So I still, worthy, I think is the next step, because I don't use that word. I use a play word.
What's your play word?
I don't have exactly a word for it, but I just call it being, I just call it being awesome. So I say that a lot about myself. I normally am joking. I'm like, I'm so fucking awesome. So like, I bounce with it. I don't say I'm fucking awesome and then,
Why not?
Stop. That's because
That's
I'm
the step
playing. That's what I'm saying.
That was the disclaimer.
I'm playing. So the worthy will come when the shoulders just drop, and I just say,
And you just
worthy,
let it fall out.
Yeah, and without having a disclaimer, without having to
make it
follow
fun.
it up with why. Just I'm worthy.
Drop
what is
mic.
it? Yeah, drop some mic.
Walks off.
Typewriter.
I like it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna need the question re-asked.
So, what's an experience you've had where you like not even struggled with worthiness, but had an experience of either recognizing you were becoming worthy or like acknowledging your worth?
Ooh, struggled with worth. Well, I can say, okay, I'll give kind of like two examples using school. So like I've always had like, and it kind of deals with like sexuality and like learning about that, I guess. But I guess first struggle for real was being homeless as a, because like we like everyone has a struggle, like no one's is greater or worse, but I know for me, like in middle school, my family and I were homeless for the whole time I was in middle school, which is the same point that you go through like hormone changes and go through
That's
your
the roughest part.
Yeah, it's real cute. It was
that
real
first
cute.
one.
It was like, yo.
It's like, what's happening to my body?
And it's not that like my mom didn't give me the talk prior to, but yeah,
It's not
still
like going through it.
Yeah, in the middle of it. And I think that was the first, now that I like really process it and like understand how things factor in, when I brought up capitalism and how that kind of affects like understanding your self-worth and not understand how poverty has a play to things, and not like, children really don't know. So, getting to a point where, everyone's forgiven for that point in time of being assholes. But like at the time, it's like you really don't know what people are going through. You don't understand why this person doesn't or does have what you or do not have. So
Or rewears an outfit.
Yeah, or like why you can't dress as, you don't know how to dress yourself, but just coming out of private school. So it was a big shift. Like I'd say 5th to 8th grade was like a big not understanding worth, because I do feel like prior to that, like I didn't think I was hot shit, but it was like, no, like I'm cool, like I'll fuck with me, like fuck with me, like I'm cool. But then it's like not understanding what your body is doing, not understanding why you like this girl but she likes this guy, but then you kind of like that guy too, but then nobody's really it's just it was a lot. And just a lot of not understanding, not talking to my family about it, because I didn't want to be more of a burden, which is another thing I think goes with self-worth, and why I think it's so heavy, because it's like I had a big thing. It's like I just don't want to be another burden, something to add to what you already have to deal with. But even through that, meeting people who were just as confused as I was, and I'm getting to a point where I realized that even though I don't feel like I'm like really out there or as brave or adventurous, I do recognize that there are people who do see me that way. And it's just kind of like not seeing my worth through other people, but I don't know, I see a lot. I like a lot that there are people who are still learning about themselves as far as like being queer or trans.
It's like almost like a mirror.
Yeah, and I've noticed that like through all parts in life, like I've always had somebody who has entrusted me with that. literally since like the first grade, and them not even knowing and I not even knowing, but we know that there's a something, and I feel that we're different. Like for me, I feel like that was like the real first realization. Like I was working with this guy at like the Omni or whatever, and I had a crush on him for like the longest time because he was like the cutest boy. He looked like Ryan Gosling or whatever. And he was from Georgia, girl, and he played like basketball, so he was real cute, But there was just something about my friend Drew. But then, like, just one night we were all hanging out, and then I was, I prepped myself up because I was gonna make my move, shawty. Like, we was having a party, we was drinking, we played Never Have I Ever, and that's my game.
That's my game.
I will air myself out as a move.
Tell the people all the
Hello.
place.
But so called myself making a move, and then that was the moment he decided to come out to me. But it was in that moment that I realized it's like, like, there's something about me that people feel safe.
Yeah.
And I exude that. And there has to be something like admirable and worthy of supporting, which is the definition of worthy. But I love that. And it like kind of has propelled me to like venture into the career that I'm kind of like going into right now as far as like being a sexuality professional and educator, because it's like, that is a skill that not everybody has, and not everyone can be that person, and I do want to be that person, no matter how it comes off to other people, where it's like, damn, you be out here doing what and what and what. It's like, yeah, but there are people who are afraid to, and eventually they're going to come to me for the question, and I need to be able to answer that. And for me, like that,
From the Spurs.
honestly, because I mean, you can Google anything, but it makes a difference to be able to talk to somebody and be like, what was your actual experience? Like, you went here, how did you feel? What was your experience? What would you not do again? What would you do again? And I like to be like this, well, girl, let me tell you a story, because it is. But I think for me is what propels me to keep finding and like enjoying the process of finding myself worthy. Because it's like, like I'm an asset to people, and I want to keep doing that.
Some purpose in there too. I feel like as you discover more of like what your purpose to do, it makes it easier to accept worth.
Yeah.
Because if you don't feel like you got anything here for, what is there? What is there?
And then not gauging it off of like, I guess, because for me it's not what can make me money or what's gonna put me in this like numerical place. It's just like, how many more people am I going to be able to impact kind of place.
Exactly.
Which kind of changes how you, I'm going to keep saying quantify, but quantify your worth. Because I do think that we see it in a sort of like numerical kind of place, because we are in a world run by numbers.
Like you were saying, it's like a capitalistic value versus like a spiritual value.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And so both of those could be a form of currency. Which currency do you value?
Yeah, and I'm just in a place of like social currency is a thing, community currency is a thing,
and that's coming back and being valued.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So
how about you, brother man?
I want to make sure I remember the question accurately.
Of course.
You said, what was the experience that basically allowed you to reveal to yourself that you were worthy? So there's been a few.
Also, you said the question better than I ever said the question, so thank you for repeating it so easily.
I was like,
I just want to make
that's
sure
what
I
I meant
listen.
to
sound
say.
like what the question was.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. We'll actually cut his voice and put it over over you guys.
We'll do that.
It'll still show your lips moving.
Yeah.
Tell me something. You know what?
Actually, dub all of our voices. That would be hilarious. Josh talking to Josh about Josh.
Well, the thing about worthiness. Me too, girl.
And I was trying to hit on him.
One of the things that you said stood out like crazy, which was when you could feel the thought come to you and you responded to the thought before it just vomited out of your system.
Yeah.
This was a moment of, I've always had this overabundant feeling of worthiness. I had a God complex. And recognizing that and having to face that was a very humbling experience, right? Seeing myself as somebody who was worthy or above normal average people. And so this mindset had been carried through, and I was also homeschooled, and we were raised in a Christian home, not super religious, but at the same time knew what it is.
Yeah.
And so I had made my life's mission based off of this God complex type purpose, like, I'm going to hold off on this, I'm not going to do that, and blah, blah, blah. So I had built this image of myself up until I was in my 20s since I hadn't done all these sins that so many people have done by the ages that people normally do them, then I'm worthy of this type of lifestyle. Now, it was the ripping away of all of that over the years of my failing out of my business and living in my car, and actually specifically that, living in my car for a little while. It was after I fell out of one of my businesses. It was one of those low points where you were brought to really question your worthiness and your intellect and everything about you that just allows you to create. So all of these different experiences kind of added up until even recently, me getting married, me having a baby, and the relationship, dealing with relationships is something that caused me to face that image as a crumbled pile of dust. And then having to deal with me facing that image, this God that I had created being destroyed, and then finding the purpose now that my self-created God is has to be looked past.
It's an ego death.
It's an ego death. And so and it was so crazy because it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I had this very vivid image, and I could paint it if I knew how to paint. Which was a man, and I found out later there's a biblical reference, Job 23:10, and I don't even read the Bible like that. But it was a man in the middle of a room, and he was in clear agony. He was crying up in pain. You could just tell the expression, you could feel the expression on this man's face, and he was in a lot of pain. And you could see that his skin was being ripped off of him. And just the whole process of what that looks like was accurate too. Very, very vivid. But in place of the skin, there was a little bit of blood, but in place of the torn skin, it was just gold. And so I had that very vivid image as I was going through some of my business struggles, and thought about that over and over again. I was like, okay, well, this is me.
Yeah.
This man who was a regular man going through this process of being turned into this new gold character. And what that looked like as an expectation in my head at first was, I'm going to become a stronger version of me, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to do that, and da. No, it was just recognizing my humanity. I have a spectrum just like everybody else to do every single thing that I've ridiculed everybody for, and to do every single thing that I've praised other people for. I have that exact same spectrum. Now that I have the spectrum, I can manage it, and I understand that when certain thoughts or certain energies come to me, I have the power to respond to them any way I choose. That's what kind of gives me that it's not even a worthiness. It's just I'm more at peace in the present. And I still have to deal with injecting the past and injecting the expectations of the future into the present, and basically adding toxic to it, because that's what non-presence is. But just understanding that you have power in your presence and you have power in the way that you respond to the thoughts that come to you is what gives that extra kick of worthiness to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. That is. And so with everybody sharing their story of worthiness, this leads me into my favorite part of the conversation. Patricia just came in, y'all. Y'all may or may not know Patricia, but Patricia just came in. Law of attraction. So for those of you who are not familiar with law of attraction, it's the general idea that which is like itself is drawn. It is not about, necessarily just karma. It's the idea of what you focus on, you attract to yourself. So some people will say, well, I got into a car accident, so I attracted that to myself. And it's like, well, I didn't ask for a car accident. Maybe you didn't ask for it, but have you been saying, people don't know how to drive. You about to crash. You about to do this. You about to do that. People almost hit me. And you probably don't get into a car accident because you've been focusing on it. Universe doesn't hear, I don't want to get into a car accident. All it hears is car accident. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we got introduced into the law of attraction. I'll start as tribute. About 13, 14 years ago, this beloved woman, my mother, came barging into my room and telling me all these very hippie-like things about how, I really have to stop complaining about people at school, and I really have to make sure that I have a lot more positivity in the way that I act. This is a woman that used to be like in the Bible all the time, like Bible thumper. And so for her to have shifted in this direction to conversations about the universe and the place of God, and not that God wasn't a part of the picture, but she spent a lot of time talking about how the universe really wanted me to know who I was. It wanted a relationship with me. She also started mentioning this thing called law of attraction and Abraham Hicks. And are y'all familiar with Abraham Hicks? No? Okay. So through this introduction, she planted this seed when I was about 14 years old of everything always works out for you, Sadie. That's what she would say. Everything always works out for you. And I had always kind of known in my life, and maybe that's what gave me the confidence to know I deserved better when I was put into public school and kids were being mean. But I've always felt like there was a necessary space for me in the world. Like I was entitled to take up whatever space I needed to take up. I think I felt that way before I knew what confidence was. I think I felt that way very much innately. So the idea of coming into this understanding of being worthy, I think I took easily to. Not in the sense of necessarily having a God complex, which I did used to think that I have. I have an ego issue. But I think now it's more so of understanding, I never had that stripped from me. I luckily grew up in a family that allowed me to hold on to that worthiness. So when my mom started coming in talking about the law of attraction, is about mainly you knowing you're worthy of the things that you want and being able to confidently and comfortably focus on those things and love yourself out of the negativity of situations. Because I already felt entitled to take up the space in the world that I felt I should, I could move in that direction. But I think a lot of the times when you talk to people about, you deserve to have whatever you want, you can have anything you want, because of the lack of feeling worthy, that seems unobtainable.
Right.
And so that's why I'm connecting these two together, because oftentimes when you try to talk to people about, think about what you want, focus on what you want, it's painful for them to do that because they don't feel worthy. So you have to directly work on the issue of worth before you can even start to help them attract what they would like to.
Right.
So what do y'all know about the law of attraction?
It is a law.
Yeah.
It is law.
What did you learn about
Yeah.
it?
No, I always kind of explain it as like energy can't be created nor destroyed. It just manifests differently. So we all have the ability to harness that energy however we please.
Yeah.
And that's not negative or positive. The universe is indifferent. So however you spin that, like you said, like you may not have thought I want to be in an accident, but if you keep putting energy towards accident, eventually you will meet that energy.
Yeah.
So the law of attraction is like whatever you're putting out there, you put that back towards yourself type thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got you.
I think I struggled with the law of attraction when I first heard about it, because it just didn't seem logical. I was like, why wouldn't I think about this thing? This thing is very important to me. Obviously
It's
I got to
true.
think about all the different, yeah, exactly. This is true. I need to think about all the things that can go wrong so I can prevent them,
Yeah.
obviously. And so that was my mindset when I was presented this idea. And so it just didn't seem logical to just stop thinking about it or to think about something else. So like, no, I need to focus on what I'm thinking about right now. And so with that, I basically had to try it. I'm all about, like, if I can't see it,
Experiment.
it doesn't exist. This is, made up stuff that's, whatever. And so I was open enough, and luckily it was coming from a source that was, it was all right. That I was open to trying it. So I had to do the same thing I did, as I said earlier. First, I had to catch myself in those cynical trains of thought. And when I did catch myself, because sometimes it'd be hours later, I would just take every point that I had and switch it to looking at how can this work? What is the positive of this? What can I learn from this? And I just had to do that over and over. And I saw, it's literally like the world just kind of shifted, but nothing changed.
But you
Just the way that I perceived it
Perspective,
changed.
yeah.
And so, like, if I were in, like, even like the parking spot thing, like, that's often what people bring
will
up.
use.
Is like, if you just think, there's going to be a parking spot there, it's going to be there. And that's the one I'm like, really? Is that what we're doing? But I tried it and it worked. And I think really it's what you were saying is like that energy you give out, it has power. It has this,
Yeah.
it has this way of not changing the world. It's not like if I think there's going to be water in here, there's going to be, or like my lotto ticket, like if if I think about it, then it'll shift to being,
Yeah, the numbers will change.
the numbers will change.
Science was
But if
like
I
that.
have this energy and I'm putting out all of the pointers, all of the little small things that we're observing all of the time will shift me in that direction of choosing the lotto number and allowing the person behind me to go first. And they get the lotto ticket that doesn't have the winner.
That's
And
a lot
I
more
get
like
the
how
winner.
it goes,
That's
yeah.
exactly how it can shift for you. So I think the law of attraction is less about, if I think about this thing, then this will happen. And it's more broad than, if I feel this energy
Yeah.
will receive back to me.
It starts in the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had to start with literally the parking spot. I had to start very tangible and physical. And as soon as I started seeing examples of it, my growth with the law of attraction broadened it more into, if I follow the fun of it, if I follow the feeling of it, then all the decisions that I'm about, if it feels right, I don't question it. I just go.
Yeah, yeah.
If you think about it, like a lot of it does start in the mind because it's like your self-talk is energy.
Yeah.
And it's energy you store, you're manifesting, you're cooking it. But that whole, like, let's use the parking space. If you say, man, parking space, I'm not gonna find a parking space. Like,
Right.
I mean, it's cute if I found one, but I'm not
Yeah.
going
It's
to.
packed in here.
Yeah,
Just,
I mean,
Defending-
let's see. Yeah,
defending
but if
that.
that's the energy, like, I'm not gonna. At the end of the day, if you truly are feeding into that, I'm not gonna find it. Like, I'm gonna say this, but I'm not gonna find it. Then you're not gonna find it.
Yeah.
If you're just
Something
like,
mad funny,
yeah.
when I first was getting into that, I'd think that, and I'm like, there ain't no parking spot, and then I walk by one. I'd be so mad. I'm like, damn, there really is, like, right in the front, and it is packed in here. But so
because sometimes it's still that action of, like, yes, you believe it, and sometimes your actions still. Yes,
You're
you
like
believe it,
half-
but your
yeah,
actions
there's
still
a
have to
delay,
meet
yeah.
because that's still energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like energy in motion. Like there's motion that has to meet with that energy. So
Right.
yeah, you can feel, you can
like
think,
the show.
but if you're not moving towards opportunity, then no, it's not gonna happen. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like end of the day, you're not gonna find it because you didn't keep looking.
Yeah, you weren't open to it.
Yeah.
It's receptivity. It's
Yeah.
perspective and receptivity.
They were talking about this. There's this video on YouTube. There's always this video on YouTube.
About everything.
There's always this video on YouTube. There's this video on YouTube. This dude was talking about the biology of this, the law of attraction, quantum physics, and all that kind of stuff. And he was talking about the amount of energy output your brain has versus the amount of energy output that your heart has, or at least the amount of electromagnetic energy. And your heart has 200 times more electromagnetic energy than your brain does. And so we have this thought, the thoughts that come to us, and then the thoughts that we respond to, and the thoughts that they respond to repetitively help generate our belief system. And the belief system is what goes down into the heart. And the heart is what generates the law of attraction, whatever it is that you truly, truly believe about yourself. And that will be manifested
Yeah, you
by
can't
the
just say it and
actions.
think it.
No, you can't just say, hey, I'm rich. You can
You have to
continue to say that over and over and over and over and over
But you
again
have to
until
believe
you
it
have
enough.
you subconsciously program yourself into seeing whatever it is that you say that you believe in.
Can
and
you
whatever-
fake it till you make it?
That is a very good question. I think it requires practice of whatever it is. So I'll use, of course, I'll use myself.
What else are you?
So I have a unquenchable thirst of learning how to create opportunity for myself. I've been this way since I was 8, or at least as long as I can remember. And so last year I was exposed to the financial markets in a very different way that requires you to learn a lot about yourself, because the market acts as a mirror to every aspect of your spectrum, and it will expose the aspects of your spectrum that are not profitable, or at least not sustainable, in order for you to deal with the market for a long period of time. And that's where that's another piece of that God complex being destroyed. Well, I'm greedy, I'm impatient, I'm fearful, and blah, blah, blah. I have these characteristics. So with the law of attraction, just specifically with the market, I know the protocol that somebody who is free and self-sufficient, I know what they have to do. And I have to internalize the belief within myself that I am this person. Not can be or need to be or whatever. This is who this exists on my spectrum, so I will align my frequency with this thinking instead of the frequency that I can still exist on, but I don't like losing money.
Yeah.
So I'm going to practice that mindset on this spectrum. So in a way, yeah, you can fake it till you make it, but at the same time, there's nothing that we can't create if we don't truly want it. There's nothing that we can't create.
And I think it also comes down to, when we talk about perspective, how big you can think. I think you really have to have a lot of life experiences in order to be able to channel a lot of this, because if you're someone who hasn't had a lot of exposure, if you've lived in the same city all your life, you don't really think bigger that other opportunities could come from outside of your spectrum or your realm. And that can be not just geographically, but if you've always had the same group of friends, you're not going to think bigger about other personalities. But the law of attraction often has a way of calling you, where you'll have an experience that you feel a connection to. Like, you'll be in line with someone at Walmart and their personality seems like nothing you'd ever be interested in, but something about them gets to a core part of you and you're like, I need that in my life. And that'll be just that little first breadcrumb that'll lead you just enough off your basic trail to your more empowered trail. And it can change the trajectory of everything. And so I think you have to be able to think bigger in order to be able to truly apply the law of attraction, but you got to start somewhere. So if y'all had a suggestion for people who wanted to try this out, what would be your suggestions?
I would suggest the homework that I did this is homework I gave my brother. So for 30 days, I asked him to do similar to what I did of catching himself when he was down a negative train of thought. Honestly, you have to be at a point where you're ready to even have that conversation.
Yeah, you have to
Because
be interested in changing.
It took him a while to even be receptive to trying it. And so he was very much like me in that way, and that's what was so sweet about it. I felt like I was like given to him because he literally is me in another body. Just like I see the trajectory of how his mind works and all of that.
Yeah.
And so for 30 days, I asked him to try to shift his thinking towards the positive of whatever situation it was. So instead of I'm going to be late for work, you say I look forward to getting to work right on time. Right when I need to. I keep it pretty vague. And if he was in a train of negative thought, I asked him to stop it wherever it is, and then you have to go back. For each negative, you have to just counter it with a positive. It's almost like a currency. So like 1 for 1, you have to counter it until you are in the green. Until you have more positive things you said in this 30 days than you have negative. And so each time you counter it, it just goes to 0. So that's just tossed up.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so at the end of 30 days, he was like Chelsea Word.
Yeah.
And so he's been on his own journey of finding how law of attraction looks for him, because it's still not my law of attraction.
Exactly.
And so he is working on that, but it took that physical proof for him to shift. Like maybe, she ain't that crazy. Maybe she knows what she's talking about. And now he is doing his own learning, his own research, and he's going off like that. So that's a suggestion that's worked in my life. So
I like that.
I always work best for me. I'm really big on writing out lists. So whether that's on like partners I want to have, or like what my friend groups would look like, or just where I want to be, it's a manifestation ritual kind of. So I sometimes try to do my new moon and full moon, but not only thinking what it is I want to like be putting into action for this cycle, which would be the 30 days, but writing it out and then saying it. And then I usually will burn it, or like I'll bury it in soil sometimes, or like leave it in the moon, because it's that exchange of energy. So taking it from my mental to when I say it and I feel it. So even the vibrations of my voice, that's energy. The writing it out and seeing it and feeling that go into the page, and then releasing that into the universe.
Yeah.
Like it's a very
it's like a magician.
It's alchemy, but that is kind of what the law of attraction is. Like, I mean, the alchemist, like that.
True.
That is what the
Read that book.
dead ass.
Yeah, read that book.
Book. I read that book over a year.
Yeah.
And each time I picked it up, it was exactly what I was dealing with. And that, like, within 24 hours. And I was just like,
voodoo.
And then I won't read it for 3 months, and it'll be exactly
Wow.
what, like, it
You
was.
read it again.
Yeah.
Because the
Now I'm
gems will be
scared to
there.
reread it because, like, I just.
Because it's creepy how it
Yeah.
knows where you're at. It
Right.
finds you.
But that's the thing, like when you're looking for that energy, when you're putting it out there that you need and you want to like put back in, like you find that. So the book is there. But yeah, that's what works for me. It's like writing out these things where it's like ideal self and saying it to yourself and you know, doing
Until it
that
becomes
exchange of
easier to
energy.
digest.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just what works for me.
Yeah,
so
that's a great suggestion. How
Yeah.
about you, bro, man?
I mean, you would just find your medium of exchange that makes the most sense for you. If it's listening or if it's watching or if it's writing, something that just comes naturally for what your tendencies are. Use that channel, and that's what you apply the repetitive ideal reality. So you, first of all, take the reality that you have now, all the negative aspects, and understand that you are 100% responsible for everything that's developed
Yep.
up to this point for what you see right now, and you will be 100% responsible for your life from this point forward, because you get to die on your own. So that's number one.
You gotta be ready to swallow that, and that's a hard thing to swallow.
that is not
take it
fun.
down by
Yeah.
yourself.
Get some bottle of water. That's why I'm always drinking water.
Yeah,
I'm
stay
still swallowing my
hydrated.
pill.
Yeah, it's hard.
So once you take ownership of the fact that you can create, that I can continue to repeat that over and over and over again because I've seen it in my own life on the negative side. And this can come in just, man, I hope that this doesn't happen. Or I really don't want, you can define your whole life and create your whole life based on the things that you say you don't want, and they will manifest. So recognize that you have power in the way that you respond to your thoughts. And if you need to use medium of listening or reading or writing to remind you that you have power in your thoughts and the way that you respond to them, then use that medium and use it as consistently as possible. Now, if you could spread that medium around in different areas of your house, be it your bathroom, your car, your wherever, then put little seeds of that source that remind you of who you really can be. And then you just expose yourself on accident. You accidentally, in your idle time, expose yourself to that refresher of, oh yeah, I am this person. I can be this person. I can be whoever I choose to be. I was here, I'm responsible, but I can be here because I choose to be. And over time, as you develop that belief in your mind, is going to go into that heart where the electromagnetic energy is heavier, and that's where it starts to attract different opportunities for you to respond in a way that will put you on this spectrum. Nothing will change in the world. The way that you respond to it will change your perspective of the world.
Absolutely. And that's all you can really have is how you respond to it. It's the only thing you have true control over. But you can, through using the law of attraction and through shifting your perspective and aligning with yourself. Alignment is one of my favorite words when it comes to this. When you're aligned with the things that you want, they can't help but come. It's like your package is on the way. It already has your name on it. Now, it might get a little lost based off of the confusing signals you've put into the radar, but it's still going to come to you when it's time for it to come. It's not going to go to nobody else. It don't got nobody else's name on it. Right. And I think it's something that people need to remember and hold on to. And when you were speaking about leaving reminders around, it's funny. I have this reminder. I always wear this ring, and I wear decorative rings over it and such because, you know, it's very plain ring. But I started wearing this ring about 3 years ago to commemorate me wanting to embrace myself, value myself, celebrate myself, and love myself. And I remember counting on these 4 fingers and saying that. And I never take it off. That's why it's so, like, you know, every shower, it probably came from Claire's or something, just a rinky-dink ring that I found. But it stays and it matters, and it's gotten to a point where I don't even think about it. I just kind of feel that way. So I
Can
do.
I ask a question?
Yeah.
To the group. So we seem pretty steeped in the law of attraction. How do you deal with being confronted with something that is perceived as negative, like something didn't go your way that you felt that you were good on, or just something bad or negative happened? How do you guys go about dealing with that now, being so versed in the law of attraction?
I'll go. Now, this is funny. So this came recently, a couple of weeks ago actually, where me and my wife, we were just clashing And I was like, okay, you know what? I need my space. She gets a call, and it's just a random call. It's a who cares call. Doesn't matter. I hear the response in my mind, and this is what solidified the wow. These thoughts are not always mine. I get to take these thoughts and then exchange them into my mouth and then let them flow out, or give them energy and start to create these scenarios in your brain where it extrapolates worse and worse and worse.
It's spiral.
It was just that perfectly clear. So for the people that deal with the situations where they deem as negative, is take the response that you have and have a conversation with whoever created that voice. Because that entity that exists within you is a part of your characteristic. It is something that it feels you are either disrespecting it with, or it's not getting, or whatever. Maybe it's just not getting its chance to express itself. Every part of our spectrum, viewed as negative or positive, can be used to serve you. So if you recognize that all of the things that come to you can serve you, you can take that negative experience and turn it into something that serves your peace.
Right. I see it as a sign that maintenance is needed. To me, it's like a check engine light. And so if I see something, or especially if I see a string of things, because sometimes it takes me more than once to actually realize that it's something going on, I have to, like you said, just take that pause and check into where is this stemming from? Where is this coming from? And it normally leads me to some work that I didn't even realize I needed to do on myself. I'm like, oh, I'm good, I'm positive, I'm going through, I'm feeling I'm doing it. But there's an aspect of me that I've either neglected or is brand new. I didn't even realize it was something that needed to be unearthed, that needs my tending to in order to get closer to being solid in myself and singular.
I don't know. I think for me, it's when it comes to like things being negative, just realizing that, like calling things out, realizing it's not me, like the universe is not singling me out. It's indifferent. I don't really care that it was me. Like if it was gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Things don't always go in
So
my
you just
favor.
brush it off.
I mean, no, that's just, no. It's not an easy brush off at all.
No, I mean,
but it is.
easy,
I mean,
but
it has to get to that point because it's like either you sit in it and it's like, well, damn, or you just like have to figure out something else. Like I'm one of those people where it's like, okay, my car broke down, so I don't have a car. Well, there is a bus, but I can walk. I can always walk. I will always walk.
She was always walking.
My feet
in
got me.
undergrad.
Like,
You
you
like
know
her
what I mean?
walking
But
like that?
it's just one of those things where it's like, well, so can't give me a ride. Well, I want to walk. You can walk at the end of the day. Like, there's always a solution. And it's always something, like you said, that you can control and create. Like, you have 2 feet, or is something accessible to you so that you can make it work. And if not, well, then that's why we have community. That's why we build systems of support, and then we look into them, and like when we're not all of ourselves, that we can refill
Someone
them
remind
vessels.
us or mirror back to us who we actually are. Yeah, and I think that's truly where being able to see the negativity as a launching point, because if something doesn't go my way, because as my mother told me, things always work out for me, it's because it's going to work out better a different way. And it's so obnoxious because sometimes, you always hear preachers and it's God, put your bed, but it ain't a setback, it's a comeback. Like, they say all that.
Close the door, there's window.
Like, they get you started on that. But at the same time, there's truth to that. Like, in order for an arrow to go forward, you have to pull it backward. It has to have the tension, it has to be tight, it has to not know what's next. The whole butterfly analogy, when the butterfly thought it was all over, when the caterpillar thought it was over, it became a butterfly. So when you are experiencing this negativity, it might feel like a setback, it might feel like things are going awry, but it's just because it's veering off of your basic path. Right. And that's that basic path we were talking about before. You might think, you know what, I wanted to just have to go home. I didn't want to have to stop by the store. But now that I do have to stop by the store and I'm late to this thing, this is an opportunity for me to get a job opportunity. This might be the time I meet the love of my life. You're thinking this setback or this inconvenience is this problem, when it really could be your golden opportunity. It's really all how you look at it and what you're looking for in it. You might end up somewhere you don't want to be so you could find something you always needed. And I think people forget that because they're inconvenienced. And we don't know what's best. One of the biggest things I think we can do is not plan so much, because you don't leave room in life to be blessed. You and your limited scope have decided this is how the day is supposed to go.
Right.
But you didn't leave room for magic.
Yeah. And you didn't realize the grandness that is waiting for you.
Because
So
you
you're-
didn't know you
you're-
deserved it.
Yeah, exactly. You're speaking from your limited scope of what you can perceive as possible. And that might be great. That might be
Yeah.
awesome.
But it
But-
can be better.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It can
go outside your
always be
comfort
better.
zone.
Yeah, and nothing grows there. Nothing
Yeah.
grows in your comfort zone. You can be comfortable, but that ain't what you're here for. We're not here to be
Inconveniences are
comfortable.
growth.
Yeah.
That's
Just opportunities for
Inconveniences
growth.
are
Yeah,
growth.
I need to get back to it. I mean, maybe I don't need it as much anymore, but anytime something went wrong, I said thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I didn't like get into
I remember
why
when you
it
did
was a
that.
thank you, I would just, as an automatic response, I trained myself to say thank you. And I think you were saying something about training earlier, getting to that. And
It works.
yeah, and it was kind of a fake it till you make it kind of
Mhm.
thing, that I was just saying thank you even if I like stubbed my toe, or like that small, but it grew to being that big as well. Those were also thank yous, because you really can, what's the thing I would like to say? It's like, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? You can say, what is this trying to teach me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that can shift
The whole
every
thing.
negative thing that you experience, and it turns it into a growth instead of just some shitty thing that happened to you and probably will happen again because you haven't shifted that. It's the universe is always trying to teach you and steer you. And if you don't get the lesson, it's going to keep coming back.
Yeah, so if it seems like the same thing always happens to you, that's probably because you're beating the drum of it. Same thing is going to keep happening until you figure out why is this happening. And instead of just
right.
complaining about it and projecting it and being externally focused, if you do some internal reflection, you can probably nip it in the butt before it has to repeat itself for the umpteenth time.
Because if it's repeating, there's a source that
There
it's
is.
growing from.
And it's a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not by accident.
And that's why it's so close.
My grandmother sent me a quote the other day just because, I was in that space earlier this week by Nelson Mandela, but it's like, I never lose, I win or I learn,
Yeah, I like that.
you know?
I like that.
Because even in the win, you learn, like, the process, and if you felt like this didn't go your way, what did you learn so that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's real simple. It's complex in feeling, but
It
it's
is.
simple.
And I think
in
that's the
solution.
thing. Feelings, because we have not paid much attention to them all this time. When you do realize you need to pay attention to them, they're overwhelming. But they're very simple. And it's almost like just sitting down in a room full of people and being able to say, hey, one at a time, let me talk to each of you.
Yes,
Anger?
everybody calm down.
Man.
I need 2 days. Me and anger need 2 days.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Let me deal with them first.
Let's
Yeah,
deal with
yeah.
them first. Just hold off. You've been waiting all this time. You know, grief. I'm gonna sit with you for a while. We can lay down with a blanket. It'll be all right. But you need to like meet them one on one,
Yeah.
and just acknowledge them. Like you said, Josh, you can't hide from them just because they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They're uncomfortable because they're trying to grow you past something. And once you're willing to grow past it, you'll be big enough to handle whatever else could have come. It won't even affect you the same way. So I want to thank y'all for this very lovely conversation.
I don't want to stop.
I know
But
you don't. I know. But I want.
We got to stop.
We gotta stop. We gotta stop. So I want to turn over to my final segment, this Take a Beat segment, and read you all something that I wrote a little while ago. I actually wrote it when I was being a program director at a nonprofit, and I wrote this for some students that I was working with at the time, but I think it applied to me too. Oftentimes the things I write for other people apply for me
Yeah.
too.
I'm speaking about myself.
Yeah, because
I hope it reaches
we all
you.
want, we all want and need a lot of the same
Right, the
things.
collective consciousness knows what I'm talking about.
So I think it could probably bless the rest of us, so we'll go for a try of it. So it's called, Do You Know What You Are Made Of? You are made of someone's every hope and dream. The very fiber of your being is constructed by the hope for prosperity of your ancestors. You are designed in divine fashion and are molded in tangible resilience. You are someone's answered prayer. You are your own provider and protector. You are the shot caller, the executive decision maker. You are a success, not just because of all the things you have done right, but because of all the ways you learn from situations gone wrong. And even then, you are victorious. You are gentle and you are powerful. You are tender and you are fierce. You are a walking contradiction that makes perfect sense with every step you take. You are free-flowing like water and you are sturdy like stones. You are melodic and you are music. You are too cool and too cheesy easy for your own good, but you are regal and elegant in your playfulness. You are the best part of laughing. You are the smile they did not know they needed and the reassurance they did not know they deserved. You are the love that never gets away. You are the spitting image of fun had while time flies and everything you lay eyes on smiles back at you. You are what sleeping soundly through the night feels like. You are as easygoing as involuntary breathing. You bring forth what others need and thank them for giving you the opportunity to share. Your heart beats for more than just yourself, but it beats to a rhythm only you can orchestrate. You are the beautiful mosaic of everything you ever thought you lost, and in your reflection, you find new things to love and lose. You are pure positive energy, even when you are so negative you do not recognize yourself. You are forever kept. You are forever wanted. You are forever fulfilled. You are the mission accomplished, even though you may have no idea what your mission is yet. You, in the midst of all this world, has placed on your shoulders and at your feet, have already won the battle. So why aren't you living your victory? So I want to thank my guests for coming to the show this evening. Chelsea, Sir Dame Amina, and Brother Joshua Walker. I want to make sure that y'all tune in tomorrow night for 50 Shades with Jay. That's at what time? 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So make sure you tune back in. We will be back on June 4th, I believe, for our 4th episode of Energy in Motion. Follow me on Instagram. That is the number 3, the letter N, and then the word motion, 3NMOTION. Energy in Motion, y'all. Y'all have a great evening.
One love, you're heading on your own.